Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Eli Show. My name is Eli Goodman, and I'm a little upset because just before the show, just prior to recording, I Googled the Eli Show news, and it was all negative. And I'm very upset with Google because of that. So I'm in a bad mood right now. I do realize the hypocrisy of that. At the end of the last podcast, I said, don't be that make everything political guy. But to me, that just doesn't seem political. It just seems funny. So they said, there's no good news about me. No good news about me out there. So welcome again to the Eli Show. And Travers weekend just happened. And I promised you on the last podcast that if you found me at Travers, you would get some nice swag. And what that swag is this item right here for those on Facebook Live. It's an Eli Show koozie. It's got my new redesigned logo on it, and it says www.theelishow.com. And on Travers Day, I did not have these at the track, and here's why. So I ordered them about 3 weeks ago from the same place that I got the coffee mugs that my guests get. And when I got the coffee mugs, it was very simple. Downloaded the art, designed the whole thing. Coffee mugs were here in a few days. Easy peasy. It's a place called discountmugs.com. And I noticed that they had koozies on there. So about 3 weeks before Travers, I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a bunch of Eli Show koozies. People have cans at the track, and I'll hand them out at the track, and it'll be fun. And so I went onto the site, designed the koozies, paid extra to make sure that they were delivered by August 22nd. They said guaranteed delivery by August 22nd. So no problem. August 22nd comes and goes. So it doesn't come and go. But on the night of August 22nd, I got home, no koozies. Nothing had arrived. And so I call these folks and I said, hey, where are my koozies? You said they'd be here by August 22nd. And the person goes, let me look it up. Let me see. Yes, Mr. Goodman, we did say that. But that particular koozie is out of stock. And it will be out of stock until September. And I said, okay, so when did it go out of stock? Oh, beginning of summer, months ago. So I then asked, how was I able to order it, first of all, have it guaranteed delivered on August 22nd, and how come nobody notified me? Well, not only are we low on our koozies, but also, we're behind on calling people about it. And so never were my koozies even available during that thing. So I said, well, all right, give me my money back. I don't want koozies that I'm going to get in late September, early October. And they said, well, what if we did this? We do have this koozie available. Very, very similar color. Not quite black. It's more like a navy blue. And it'll still look great. And I said, yeah, but I need these by Saturday. I did it for an event on Saturday. And they said, no problem. We will have these printed. We will send them out right now. And it'll be there by Friday evening. And I said, are you positive? They said, yes. Look out for the tracking number. So then the next day rolls around. It gets to be about noonish. I don't see any tracking number yet. Starting to get a bit nervous because it has to be there by the next day, by Friday night. And they said, so I called again. And I said, I'm double checking on this because if it's not going to be here on time, I don't want these things. And so the woman, let me check, Mr. Goodman. Checked it. And she says, well, It's not going to be there by Friday evening. And I said, nope, okay, don't want them. She said, guaranteed 10:30 a.m. on Saturday. And I said, all right, okay, I'll wait around. My friends are starting to do something at 9 a.m., but I will wait around at my home until 10:30 a.m. on Saturday. And so I did that. Got to be close to about 11 a.m. I called them again. They said, oh, yeah, they haven't even left here. And so they arrived yesterday, the Eli Show koozies. So if you want, I have got a bunch of these things. I've got a ton of these koozies. So you don't have to be a guest on the show if you want a koozie. Just let me know. You'll get a koozie. And basically, I called them today and said, I want my money back. And they said, okay, yeah, we fucked up. So don't use discountmugs.com to order anything. They do a bad job. Also, they have new stickers. I have these new transfer stickers with the new Eli Show logo. So if you want one of those, let me know as far as those are concerned. Now, I was going to do a podcast on Sunday, the day after Travers, because we were doing our fantasy football draft. So it's 10 people that get together every year and do a live draft. And I thought maybe if I got like 3 or 4 of the guys over here, because they do it right over at Mockery's, which is in the same apartment complex, that we could do some fun things. Like I wanted to do like a real fantasy draft. So we weren't going to draft players. We were going to draft like what band would you want to be the lead singer of? Or what character on Game of Thrones would you most like to sleep with? Or something like that. And see who won that fantasy draft. But here's the thing. Travers on Saturday, I was talking about it with these gentlemen, and none of them seemed enthused. None of them seemed like they wanted to do it. So I was like, I don't want to force people to be on my show. They don't really want to do it. But another thing happened on Sunday. And I'm not proud of this. But on Sunday, I'm perusing through YouTube. I'm wasting some time. The draft is at 4 p.m. And I get on YouTube at about, 11 a.m. or something like that. Just going through different things. And then I discover that there are new To Catch a Predator shows. For those of you who don't remember, Dateline NBC used to have a guy named Chris Hansen. And Chris Hansen would do this show called To Catch a Predator, where they would catch pedophile dudes that were trying to hook up with kids that were chatting on the internet with what they thought were children, and then went over to the house, and it turns out that the children weren't there. Chris Hansen was. And it made for, not only did they catch predators, which is a good thing, but it's very entertaining. A guilty pleasure. But in 2007, one of the gentlemen that they caught, which it's a unique thing, he didn't go over. He said, no, I don't do that. I don't meet people. He just wanted pictures of children, which is bad. That's a bad thing. But the guy's like, no, I don't actually meet children. I don't do that. And so they went over to his house and brought the crew over there and brought the police over there. And he barricaded himself inside and shot himself as the Dateline crew was there. So Dateline stopped doing it. And then Chris Hansen got caught having an extramarital affair with somebody that's of age. He wasn't a pedophile himself. And NBC fired him. And it turns out in 2015, he decides, I'm just going to take it to the internet. I'm going to do a GoFundMe, and I'm going to start new To Catch a Predator, but he can't call it that because that's NBC. So he called it Hansen versus Predator. And he started doing them again. Like 10 of them. And the first one that I saw, the guy comes out of the bathroom and he sees Chris Hansen. He goes, fuck. And then he goes, I thought you stopped doing this. And then another guy knows Chris Hansen, like personally. And he goes, Chris, what are you doing here? And so it massively entertaining, but I got sucked into that. And before I knew it, it was 3:30 p.m. and I got a text from Dave Moore. It said, hey, fantasy draft coming up in a half hour. And I said, shit, I missed the podcast. So that's why you didn't get a fantasy football podcast. Number one, I was pretty sure people didn't want to do it. And number two, I got caught up into new To Catch a Predator things. But anyway, on to what we're here to talk about today. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just skip a week with the podcast because I didn't really have a topic because I was expecting to have guests. But then at my fantasy football draft, actually, we get talking about Louis C.K. And one of my friends asked me, how long do you think he's going to come back? And I said, yeah, I think that, he apologized. I think that he'll do his time. And in time, maybe people will accept him back if he waits long enough. And they said, well, how long do you think he should wait? I was like, well, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know how long of a sentence that it should be, but I thought maybe like a year and a half, maybe like 18 months. And I did also state he'll probably be able to come back and do stand-up again, but I doubt he'll be able to do TV shows, movies, the things that he was doing. But he'll maybe be able to go on tour, and the people that want to see him can go see him, and people can pick at his shows and things like that. But I think he'll be able to do stand-up again. So I was thinking maybe like another 9 months, a year down the line that we would see something like that. And then yesterday at work, a bunch of people come up to me and say, what do you think about Louis C.K.? And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, he did stand up again. He went to the Comedy Cellar in New York on Sunday night, and he went in there unannounced. Apparently, the 115 people that were there gave him a standing ovation, and he did 15 minutes of new material. He did not mention the scandal. He didn't mention it whatsoever, and then left. And there's been a lot of conversation of, okay, so it's only been 9 months since that came out. The article in the New York Times came out on November 9th, 2017. And he apologized in the Huffington Post on November 10th, 2017. That was roughly 9 months ago. So a lot of people, Twitter, people in the New York Times, a lot of news outlets thought, way too soon, man. You didn't wait long enough, and you didn't serve your punishment enough. And I do understand that line of thinking. And I want to get into this, the Me Too stuff, because I really want to actually now there's some women that have joined the Facebook Live. Feel free to chime in, any of your opinions, things of that nature. But I would really, really love to get a few women actually on the show to have a better discussion about this, because I'm a man, at least biologically. I'm not a man in a sense that I can't, build a house or anything like that, but biologically I'm a man. And we really don't know a lot about this. And what we do know, we're not very, we're not good at it. A little hesitant to even do this podcast because I don't want to pull a Matt Damon. I don't want to try to comment on something and suck at it and then be part of the problem, that sort of thing. But let's face it, we do not understand women. There's a reason why I'm 37 and single. So we also don't have a firm grasp on what our behavior should be towards women. Now, obviously, we shouldn't sexually assault women. Obviously, we shouldn't sexually harass women. But a lot of men don't know what constitutes sexual harassment. Am I hitting on her, or am I sexually harassing her? And we have a lot to learn in that regard. Now, make no mistake, Louis C.K. sexually harassed women. He did bad things. But what I want to explore today is I want to explore the timeline of it and see if has Louis C.K. truly learned his lesson, or does he need more time off before he comes back? Now, make no mistake, I want Louis C.K. to come back. I did the top 10 stand-up comedians podcast. He was the number 1 on the top 10. He is one of my personal heroes as far as a stand-up comedian is concerned. I was very disappointed to find out that the allegations were true, and disappointed Louis C.K. For what he did. But I do want him to come back at some point and at least do stand-up, because he's one of the greatest ever to do that. But I also want him to serve his time and learn his lesson. But before I actually get into the Louis C.K. timeline, I did, we've done, I don't know how many episodes in total I've done now when you count the solo episodes, but I think we're around, like, with the solo episodes, like 11 or 12 or something of that nature. But a friend of mine didn't start listening until after 3 episodes were recorded. she listened to all three relatively quickly in a row. And the third episode, if you remember, was James Dolan. And we talked about 80s toys. And I made a joke that I was talking about My Buddy, because I had the 80s toy My Buddy. And I made a joke because he mentioned Kid Sister. And I said, yeah, they came out with Kid Sister because women didn't have, the girls didn't have that toy yet. And then I said, hashtag me too. And I said that quite a bit in the first three episodes, hashtag me too, after, certain jokes and things of that nature. And I won't say this person's name because I didn't get permission from them because this is a personal message that I got from them. But I do want to share it. She says, okay, I'm having a really hard time enjoying, quote, 80s toys, unquote, because it was prefaced with a bad Me Too joke. And that's like the third one. So I finally have to say something. And then I'll be able to go back and reminisce about 80s toys. Okay, so nothing undermines the hashtag Me Too movement more than number one, false claims, number two, unproportional claims, and number three, joking about it. People's lives have been ruined by sexual assault and harassment. Hashtag Me Too put a doctor who assaulted over 250 girls in jail. That's that guy from the U.S. Olympic team. And now finally Harvey Weinstein. Those are just two examples on a higher level of what Me Too has done. It's so prevalent that I'm sure you have a friend / sister / aunt / mother / teacher, etc., who has been a victim of sexual harassment or assault. Just something to think about. Okay. And so when I read that message, I thought, okay, no more Me Too jokes, because I didn't understand it. Didn't understand it. I'm one of those people that feels that you can find humor in almost anything. And one of the things that I did find humorous about the initial part of Me Too is men not knowing, if they could do anything at that point in time, because they don't know where the line is, because we don't know anything. But that did, when I got that message, I say, okay, there are people that listen to this that probably have been victims of sexual assault, so I will cool it with the Me Too jokes. But I do want to make sure, that people know that I do not condone any of that kind of behavior towards women. I don't condone people sexually harassing women. I don't condone catcalling. I don't condone, and I certainly obviously don't condone sexual assault. Okay, Andy. Why does time have anything to do with learning a lesson? I learned not to touch a hot stove after you got burned. Okay, so this is what I'm glad you asked that, Andy, because I'm going to go over the timeline of all the events, and then it's not set in stone, but I believe you can pinpoint, get close to where Louis C.K. stopped doing the sexual harassment, where he actually stopped doing it, and then when he got caught doing it. I think there's a long gap there, and I think I know the reason why. And this is from listening to a bunch of comedy podcasts, mainly Joe Rogan talking about it, Mark Maron talking about it on his What the Fuck podcast, Whitney Cummings talking about it on her podcast, and Tom Segura and his wife, Christina Pazlinski, talking about it on their podcast, because they all know Louis C.K. personally. They're all in the stand-up comedy thing. And they have sort of alluded to when it stopped, when Louis C.K. stopped doing that. And it wasn't recently when he stopped doing it. Now, it's not 100%, but here is from the New York Times article, which you can still go to the New York Times website and read Louis C.K.'s stuff. You can not Louis C.K. stuff, sorry. You can read this article. It's still on their website about the 5 women that accused Louis C.K. of sexual harassment. And then the next day he confirmed that all 5 were telling the truth. So in this timeline, the first reported incident occurred in the late 90s. And it occurred in the offices of the writers of the Chris Rock show. Chris Rock had a show, I don't know how long it ran, in the late 90s, and Louis C.K. was a writer on it. Louis C.K. was a writer on a lot of shows. He wrote for Conan O'Brien in the late 90s. He wrote for Cedric the Entertainer in the late 90s. And he wrote for the Chris Rock Show. And so he asked a woman that was also a writer on the show. Now, she didn't want to identify herself, but he asked a woman that was also a writer on the show if she would watch him masturbate. And she said yes. And she said she did feel pressure to say yes. And so they went into his office, shut the door, and he did that with, during the workday with people outside. So obviously very inappropriate behavior. And that was in the late 90s, that reported incident. And the next one was in 2002, and it was two female comics. Dana Min Goodman is her last name, and Julia Wolov, W-O-L-O-V. They were performing at the U.S. Comedy Arts Festival in Aspen, Colorado, and also Louis C.K. was performing there. So a bunch of the comics after the show were at the bars, and the bars were closing time. And Louis C.K. was drinking with these ladies, and he said, "Why don't you come back to my room for a nightcap?" And they're like, "Yeah, they had just done a comedy show. They want to keep the party going. And why not join Louis C.K. At his room? He was a more established comic at the time. Have a drink." And when they got there and when they had the drinks, he asked them if they would watch him masturbate. Now, they said yes, but they said it like they thought he was joking. And they said, "Yeah, sure, Louis," or whatever. And then he went right into it, fully disrobed, completely naked, and proceeded to do that, finished. Then they left, and they felt pretty bad after that. They didn't think he was actually going to do it. They did say it was okay, but they thought he was joking, and he went ahead and did it. And that was in 2002. Oh, we got more comments. Let's see here. Okay. And so that was in 2002 when that happened. So that was the second claim. Now it's the second claim, 3 women. Because remember, it was 5 women that reported it, but 2 women, it was the same exact thing. So second claim, 3 women. 2003, a comedian, her name is Abby Schachner, Schachner. So a comedian, she was doing a show and she wanted to invite Louis C.K. to it. So she called him up, and as she's trying to invite him to the show, she thinks, and it seems pretty apparent, and Louis C.K. did confirm this, that he was masturbating while they were talking on the phone. He didn't say it outright, but she could tell. She could tell from what she was hearing, and felt very, very awkward. The call went on for some time, and he kept doing it. So obviously that made her feel very uncomfortable. So that was 2003. And then the big one was 2005, a comedian / actress named Rebecca Corey, Corry. And this situation is they are filming a television pilot that was being produced by David Arquette and Courtney Cox. They were together at the time. And she was going to be one of the main stars, Rebecca Corry, if this show did get picked up. It ended up not getting picked up, but if it did, she would have been one of the main cast members. And Louis C.K. was guest starring on the pilot. So he was an actor on the show with her. And he asked her if she would come back to his dressing room with him and watch him masturbate. And not only did she say no, Rebecca Corry, but she also reminded Louis C.K., this is 2005, that he had a young daughter. She was not yet 2 years old at the time. It was his oldest daughter. And at the time, his wife was pregnant with his second daughter. And so she not only said no, but she scolded Louis C.K. and reminded him of these facts. And she said that his face got really red, and he started to tear up, and that he said, "I have issues." And that is the last reported case of this happening. So I'm not saying that it didn't happen after that, but that's the last, any sort of evidence shows that Louis C.K. did these things. And so the reason why I bring this up is Louis C.K. in 2005 was not nearly as famous as he is now. He hadn't even done a regular comedy special yet. He had written and directed Pootie Tang, but other than that, he had not done a ton of stuff yet. And he had just become a father, and he had a second daughter on the way. And so I've listened to a lot of the comedians discuss this, because it was one of those things, kind of like Harvey Weinstein, in the comedy community. A lot of the stand-ups already knew about it. A lot of his friends knew about it. A lot of female stand-ups knew about it. And so they've been talking on the podcast, Jim Norton, Joe Rogan, Doug Stanhope, Mark Maron, etc. And a lot of them theorized, because they stopped hearing about it around this time, around like 2006, 2007. They stopped hearing Louis C.K. was doing these things. And a lot of them have this theory that it was because of that comment about his daughters. He was becoming a father. He had young daughters of his own, and maybe he had realized that that's not how you treat women at that point in time. And then Louis C.K. really started to blow up and started to get famous on a 2008 special called Chewed Up. That's when his 2008 comedy special Chewed Up is when people really started to notice him. Now, he did plenty of masturbation jokes in Chewed Up. One of them was quite controversial. He said, "You can tell how bad of a person that you are, how soon you masturbated after September 11th. That was the joke. And he said for him, it was when between the two buildings going down. So he's told a lot of masturbation jokes. But he's also talked a lot about his daughters and going into raising them. And in more recent specials, he's talked about his inappropriate behavior and also men's inappropriate behavior towards women. In 2012, he did a special at Carnegie Hall. Now, this one is not something that you can actually watch. It was just recorded. It was an album that came out. 2008, Louis C.K. live at Carnegie Hall is basically what it is. And one of the stories that he told in this, and who knows if this story is actually true, but he told a story about when he was 9 years old, he showed a girl with Down syndrome his penis. He said he asked her if she could look at his penis. She said yes, and he took it out, and she said, "All right, put it away, whatever." And it was just a little bit that he did, and people laughed. But it's kind of eerily similar to the things he did later in his life. So maybe he was starting to recognize, okay, that's not appropriate behavior. And then in 2013, he did an HBO special called Oh My God. Now, the HBO special has since been taken off of HBO Now, HBO Go. You can't find it now. You might be able to find like a DVD of it, but you can't find it on any of the streaming sites because HBO took it down. But in the Oh My God special, he was talking about how dating takes courage. He was talking about how he was talking about how it takes courage for a guy to go up and ask a girl out, because we're really bad at that. We're bad at rejection, things of that nature. So he talks about how it takes courage on that end. And then he talks about how it takes courage for a woman to go out with a man, because statistically, men are the number one threat to women. He goes, our biggest threat is heart disease, but all the bad things that have happened to women in history are pretty much men's fault and men doing it to them. So it takes a lot of courage for a woman to say, yeah, I'll get in your car with you, you person that I barely know, and go someplace with you. And so it does seem as though perhaps he had sort of seen the error of his ways. Some people have theorized that he was doing that to sort of shield himself from what he had done before. And that's entirely possible. On his show, Louis, there was also an episode that at the time, I don't think it drew controversy. I think people actually gave it, I could be wrong. I think people actually gave it what do you want to say, props? I don't know. Where Louis tried to, he forcibly tried to kiss the woman that he likes. That was played by Pamela Adlon. And I remember at the time people saying that, it sheds light on men's inappropriate behavior and things like that. And so he actually got credit for it at that point in time. So who knows if he kept on doing it that entire time, or if because of what that woman said, reminding him of his daughters and starting to raise young women, perhaps he did mature and perhaps he did change his ways, which is what I theorize did happen. But who knows? I could be wrong. Maybe he did it all the way up until the day he got caught. But it doesn't. The evidence doesn't point to that, is what I'm saying. And now, question for you folks. So another thing that a lot of people have been saying, as far as comedians, people that are in the industry, is that if he would have just come out with this before the Harvey Weinstein thing, because it did start to get some rumblings about 2 to 3 years ago, because of all people on a podcast, Roseanne Barr said that she heard stories like that. She said it never happened to her with Louis C.K., but she had heard stories of him masturbating in front of other female comedians. And then so people started to ask him about it, and he said he wasn't going to address rumors. And but do you think if well before the Harvey Weinstein thing, if he just would have done what he did after New York Times came out with and said, yes, this is true, I did this, do you think that he would have got, I don't want to say got up, but do you think people would have been more accepting of that than what he did do, which was try to shield it off until eventually the New York Times got a hold of it and been like, all right, now I have to admit it? What do you think on that? Anybody on Facebook Live? What are your thoughts? Let's go ahead and actually read what his statement was. So I'm going to read the statement. This was the day after the New York Times report, and he released this, I believe, via the Huffington Post. I want to address the stories told to the New York Times by 5 women named Abby, Rebecca, Dana, Julia, who felt able to name themselves, and one who did not. Now, I don't know if that comes off as sort of passive aggressive to the person that didn't name themselves, or if he's just saying, the women, these women named themselves, or if he was just stating that as fact. Back into it. These stories are true. At the time, I said to myself that what I did was okay, but I never showed a woman my dick without asking first, which is also true. So at this point in time, when you're reading this, it's like, okay, he's trying to justify his actions here. He says, I never showed a woman dick without asking first, which is also true. But then he goes on to say this. But what I learned later in life, too late, is that when you have power over another person, asking them to look at your dick isn't a question. It is a predicament for them. The power I had over these women is that they admired me, and I wielded that power irresponsibly. I have been remorseful of my actions. I have tried to learn from them and run from them. So I think that is important to say and run from them, because he did. When he was asked about it years before, he said, I'm not going to talk about that. If he just would have addressed it maybe at that point in time and admitted it then, maybe the public reaction would have been a bit different. Now I'm aware of the extent of my actions. I learned yesterday the extent to which I left these women who admired me feeling badly about themselves and cautious around other men who never would have put them in that position. I also took advantage of the fact that I was widely admired in their community, which disabled them from sharing their story and brought hardship to them when they tried to, because people who look up to me didn't want to hear it. I didn't think that I was doing anything of that. I didn't think that I was doing any of that because my position allowed me not to think about it. There is nothing about this that I forgive myself for. I have to reconcile it with who I am, which is nothing compared to the task I left them with. I wish I had reacted to their admiration of me being a good example to them as a their admiration of me by being a good example to them as a man and given them some guidance as a comedian, including because I admired their work. The hardest regret to live with is what you've done to hurt someone else, and I can hardly wrap my head around the scope of hurt I brought on them. I'd be remiss to exclude the hurt that I brought on people who I work with and have worked with, and with whose professional and personal lives have been impacted by all of this, including projects currently in production. The cast and crew of Better Things, Baskets. So those are two shows that he produced, but he wasn't on. The Cops, One Mississippi, which is Tig Notaro's show on Amazon. I Love You, Daddy, which is the movie that was just about to release that has since been scrapped. I deeply regret that this has brought negative attention to my manager, Dave Becky, who only tried to mediate a situation that I caused. I have brought anguish and hardship to the people at FX who have given me so much, The Orchard, who took a chance on my movie, and every other entity that has been on me through the years. I have brought pain to my family, my friends, my children, and their mother. I have spent my long and lucky career talking and saying anything that I want. I will step back and take a long time to listen. Thank you for reading. So that was on November 10th, 2017. So he said he was going to take a long time to listen. And people said 9 months is not a long enough time. Now, Andy has said, if you didn't learn a lesson after being confronted on a national stage, then you never will. And I think that he did, in fact, obviously learn his lesson. And my theory is that he learned it years before, and basically hoped that what he did prior would never come out. He didn't address it head on, and that was his main problem. But do you think that Louis C.K. should stay away forever? Or do you think at some point in time that he should be allowed to at least do stand-up comedy again? What do you think? If you don't want to put it on Facebook Live, then email me at the Eli Show 12, the Eli Show 12 at gmail.com. Now, so for me, I obviously want him to, at some day, be forgiven and be able to come back. But I do want to hear from women on this. So far, I've heard from that person that I mentioned before, but this was well before talking about Louis C.K. The other two responses I got today. One is from my dear friend, Lisa Ostrander. So here's what Lisa said. Let's see here. Let me go back to that. Left a comment on my Facebook post. This is going to go over like a fart in church, but if I had a penis, I would pull it out all the time and pee on things and wiggle it around. Hashtag penis envy, hashtag wiggle worm, hashtag I cannot grow up, hashtag seems like it would be a fun toy. That would be using your penis irresponsibly, Lisa. That is not, you're missing the entire point of the podcast here. That is not proper behavior for you and your hypothetical penis. So you might want to think about your actions. And we don't pee on everything. It is a thing that it is one of the nicer things about having the penis is that urinating outside is a breeze. It's really easy. Unless the breeze is too strong, then it might come back at you. The other response I got was from my sister in my phone as Sis. This is Carrie Goodman. I think the Louis C.K. thing is a sexist double standard. Kathy Griffin has been receiving death threats and couldn't perform in the U.S. for a really long time. And Roseanne lost her whole show. They posted stupid shit online, and he exposed himself to innocent women. Yes, he did. But as far as what Kathy Griffin lost and Roseanne lost versus what Louis C.K. lost, they're pretty much the same thing. Louis C.K. did have a TV show that he lost. It was called Louis on FX. Louis C.K. had another Netflix special that was coming up beyond the one that he did, which was called 2017. That got scrapped. Louis C.K. was supposed to be in the sequel for The Secret Life of Pets. That got scrapped. Well, that didn't get scrapped, but he's out of it. He's not part of it. He had a movie that he did that was fully done. It was post-production. It had already been done. It was supposed to be released, I think, a couple days after the allegations came out, and that is completely gone. You can't find that anywhere. You can't find that any streaming. You can't find it anywhere. It's just gone. And he'll never be able to do those things again. Louis C.K. won't be able to do a TV show again. He won't be able to do movies again. He won't be able to do those things. So he lost TV shows. He lost those things. And so as far as it being a double standard and for posting stupid shit online and being sexist, I really don't think so. Especially when you look at another comedian that's not as well known as Louis C.K., but his name is Owen Benjamin. Now, I certainly do not agree with anything Owen Benjamin said. Owen Benjamin is, he actually lives in Saranac Lake, New York right now. He went to college with me. I remember Owen. But he became a comedian. He became a pretty well-known comedian. He was in that movie, The House Bunny. And he's been on some podcasts. He's been on Joe Rogan's podcast and stuff like that. And he tweeted about David Hogue, the young activist from the Parkland school shootings that has been out there and advocating for gun control and things like that. And now Owen has also said some white nationalist racist shit on Twitter as well. But the tweet that got him banned was, he said, "I don't think a kid that doesn't have hair on his balls should tell me whether or not I could buy a gun." And that got him kicked off. Got kicked off Twitter. I think he got kicked off YouTube for a while. He's back on YouTube now. He got banned from YouTube live streaming for 3 months. I think he got banned for, but he's back on YouTube now. And he's doing like a live stream every day, basically spouting hateful shit. But posting stupid shit online can hurt a male comedian. It also hurt James Gunn, the male director of the Guardians of the Galaxy. He posted a bunch of stupid shit online a long time ago, and he lost that job. So what Louis C.K. did was terrible. But I don't think equating the Kathy Griffin thing with it is the same thing. Now, Kathy Griffin got death threats because she pissed off Trump supporters, and they don't act things very rationally. Now, granted, it was a picture of her holding up his severed head. But here's the funny thing about Kathy Griffin. Speaking of that, this is an article from 2018, from March 11th of this year. And it's in USA Today. But here's the article, March 11th, 2018. Comedian Kathy Griffin is embarking on her comeback. Some 9 months after she provoked outrage and lost much of her work by posing with a fake severed head appeared to depict President Donald Trump. Griffin announced in HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher on Friday, so that means she got to go on a TV show, not in a comedy club, 9 months after what she did. She had just booked some upcoming shows at New York's Carnegie Hall and Washington's Kennedy Center, Trump's backyard, as she called it. "I'm dipping my toes into touring again," Griffin said, adding that the Republican president and his supporters would prefer that she never worked again. Griffin's appearance on Maher's show, in which she called her small, victorious announcement, appeared to mark the beginning of her comeback after the backlash over a offending photo last May badly hurt her ability to work. Now, I'm not equating the two offenses, the same thing, but she got all pissed off that Louis C.K. was able to come back. Now, Louis C.K. came back at a comedy club, performed in front of for 15 minutes in front of 115 people. After Kathy Griffin did that, she toured all throughout Europe. She did shows all throughout Europe during those 9 months, and then started doing shows at things like Carnegie Hall and Washington's Kennedy Center, 9 months after that. And and she's kind of equated that it's the same thing, Louis C.K. coming back and doing 15 minutes for 115 people. So I don't necessarily agree with that. That might be a controversial opinion, but my thought process on Louis C.K. Now, maybe he came back too soon, but I do think that he learned what he was doing was completely inappropriate well before the public found out about it. If you just look at the reported incidents, you look at when his daughters started to raise his daughters, and when his material started to talk more about his daughters and about men's behavior towards women, I do think that he learned that what he was doing was wrong, and then he just tried to hide from it. And the more famous that he got, the more he tried to hide from what he had done in the past. And the thing about stand-up comedy is that there's no producers of it. There's no advertising dollars. Well, there could be and things like that. But comedians that are very, very controversial can still go and tour and have the people that they want to, the people that want to come see them. So if he wants to just basically do stand-up comedy and see who will come watch his shows, I think at some point, maybe not 9 months later, but at some point he should be allowed to do that. Because he didn't try to hide. Well, he did try to hide from what happened, but he did apologize for it, acknowledge that what he did was wrong. And the other thing is that before the New York Times thing came out, there's also in the previous, no, I don't know if it was the previous New York Times article, there was another New York Times article that sort of followed up on it and said that they talked to those people that, they interviewed for the first story, and did say that apparently in 2009, Louis C.K. wrote all of them emails apologizing for his behavior previously, and saying that he was going through a lot of issues back then and things like that. So he had apologized to them specifically before it became public, many years before it did. I don't know if that counts for anything, but I have a feeling that I totally botched this. I was going to try to make points, but I think I might just have pissed people off. Another thing that, forget it. So if you want a koozie, let me know. Also, I have the ability now to transport all of this equipment safely. I bought some nice foam padded cases for it. So I want to do remote shows. I can go to businesses. I can go to your home if you want, wherever you want to do a remote show, as long as the audio can work. Let's do it. It doesn't have to be here in my apartment. Okay, so quick hits. Now remember, quick hits, for those of you that didn't listen to the last episode, are just little news things that I think are funny. So we're not talking about sexual harassment or Me Too anymore. But these little quick hits. So for today's episode, I want to talk about first Naomi H. Now this is a person that is on Twitter, and apparently this person had just secured an internship at NASA, which that's a big deal, an internship at NASA. But be careful what you put on social media, folks, because here's what Naomi H. did when she found out that she had gotten an internship at NASA. So she goes on Twitter and she says, "Everyone shut the fuck up. I got accepted for a NASA internship." Very excited about her NASA internship. And then a gentleman named Homer Hickam. And now, if you have not heard of this man, he is an engineer that works for NASA. And he's pretty well known because he was the NASA engineer who trained the first Japanese astronauts that went into space. So he's a pretty significant historical figure in NASA. So he just responds to the tweet, language. Just kind of trying to offer her a little help. Gonna work for NASA, try to avoid the fucks in the tweets. Now, Naomi H. must have never heard of Homer Hickam because she responds back, "Suck my dick and balls, I'm working for NASA." Not a good move. Not a good move. Because NASA follows this gentleman's Twitter, they see her response to his response, and they say, "You know what? We don't think you're material for the NASA internship anymore." So be careful about what you put on Twitter. Because then, if it goes viral, other people will investigate you. And so not only did she not get the internship at NASA, but now the people that sort of investigate, people that their tweets go viral, discover and out her as a furry. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with what a furry is, a furry is a group of people that one of their sexual things that they like to do is dress up in like mascot outfits, or like panda bear suits, or whatever sort of furry animal they dress up as, and then as they're wearing these costumes, they bone each other. So she got outed as a furry and also lost her NASA internship. So be careful what you put on social media, folks. And then my last item for quick hits is Susan from Canada. Now, here's the deal with Susan from Canada. It was the ultimate bridezilla story. So Susan from Canada posts on Facebook a big, long explanation of why her wedding got called off. She called off her wedding 4 days before it was going to happen. And here's her explanation. So she goes through this long, long story about how her and her husband have been together since they were 14. Well, her almost husband. Been together since they were 14. And they have scrimped and saved, and they have managed to save up $15,000 for their wedding. So kudos for that. That is good saving. But the wedding that she wants is going to cost $60,000. So here's how Susan from Canada decided, all right, here's how we're going to make up the difference. When they send out invites to this wedding, they say, if you want to come to this wedding, it's basically required that you give us, wait for it, $1,500 for a gift. $1,500 cash to help pay for this wedding. So of all the people that they invite, 8 RSVP and say they're coming, and they're going to give the $1,500, which that's way more. That is 8 more than I thought would do something like that. But then she says that she is livid because they don't have enough money for this wedding. How come people can't just donate $1,500 a piece for this thing? And then she says that it's you can get $1,500. It's a basic part of any budget, which not a lot of people can just fork over $1,500 to go to a wedding. And then her husband suggests, well, why don't we do something smaller? And he even suggested possibly eloping to Vegas. And then she gets mad that he even suggested that, and that gets mad that he doesn't apologize for suggesting it. So eventually he decides, all right, this chick is not worth it. And apparently, Susan from Canada, apparently she really idolizes the Kardashians. She follows all of them. She posts about the Kardashians all the time, and she wants to live that lifestyle. But both her and her husband work on a farm in Canada, so she doesn't have that lifestyle. And what she is trying to do now, apparently, is remain anonymous, other than being known as Susan from Canada. I think that's a mistake for Susan from Canada, because what she should do, if she really wants to live like a Kardashian, is sell this fucking story. Do interviews. Go out there and do a Cash Me Outside, how about that interview, and become the person that everybody already hates as Susan from Canada, and just parlay that into cash. Just parlay it. You'll get more than $60,000. You might even get your own reality show. There could be a Susan from Canada reality show. So don't hide, Susan from Canada. Get out there. Come on the Eli show. We'll do an interview for you, and see your side of this story about why your cruel friends and family won't give you $1,500 for your wedding. All right, so that's it, folks. That's it. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I hope I've given you some things to think about, which I don't think I did. I don't think I made my case very well. But email me. Do you think Louis C.K. should ever be allowed to come back and do stand-up again? And if so, how much time do you think he should wait? because people apparently think that 9 months is not long enough to wait. It's not a long enough sentence. So how much time should Louis C.K. serve before he gets to start doing stand-up again, if ever? Please let me know. I want to hear feedback. The Eli Show 12, the Eli Show 12 at gmail.com, or private message me on Facebook, or text me if you have my number. All right, everybody. Have an excellent day. Bye, Facebook Live. See you. Ooh, wait. Hold on. Wait a minute. Okay, hold on. I faked out the end of the podcast. There were more comments I didn't see. I don't think that men in general realize how many times women are in that situation where a guy does something invasive or inappropriate and the girl just says, okay, laughs, whatever, due to the shock of the situation and just wanted to get out of it as soon as possible. This is not to say I agree with what either of those women did. So I believe that what Carrie's talking about there is Kathy Griffin or Roseanne Barr. Yes, absolutely. We do not know. We know what's totally inappropriate. Like jerking off in front of people is totally inappropriate. But so many men out there, and when I say men, let's say age, I don't know, probably 21 and up. Probably really don't know what truly makes women uncomfortable when it seems like what could be general advances that weren't general that were inappropriate. And we really do have a long way to go before we learn what appropriate is. And but I do think that it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time for men that many of them, especially older men in their 50s, 60s, etc., that were raised, calling women broads and things like that. Men my age are going to need time to learn how to act appropriately. A good example is talk about men my age. When I was younger, I think it was like 1997 or 98, a movie came out. And that movie is called What Women Want. I don't know if people remember this movie. It had Mel Gibson. Speaking of how much time do we give somebody before we let him come back? It starred Mel Gibson before his whole, racist rants and things like that. And basically, he was a womanizer. He was a misogynist, and he was an all-around bad guy, and he has something happen to him where he can hear women's inner thoughts, and throughout the movie it causes him to be more sensitive towards women. It causes him to change his ways and ultimately learn a life lesson from it. This movie came out in 1997. Now I rewatched this last week because it's on Amazon for free, and I thought, could they make, and the reason why I rewatched it is I was thinking, could they make a movie like that now because of the way things have changed? And I don't know, 10 minutes into this thing, I was like, no, they couldn't. They could not, because the way that the things that he was saying to the women in his office and the way that he was acting before the whole switch was things that you just couldn't say in a movie now. You couldn't have a man saying it to a woman in a movie now, even. And even after he, goes through this transformation, there's jokes about him being gay that you couldn't do now. There's, and this was just, I think, 1997 or 8, like about 20 years ago. And so what was even okay then, you couldn't do now. And so people are going to, men are certainly, there's going to be a big learning curve for things like that. I know that sort of sounds bad. We have to learn how to, but for me in the first 3 episodes, I'm making Me Too jokes because I think it's okay to joke about it. And then some people let me know that that's not cool. And so it's just certainly things that what Lucy Kay did was bad at any point in time. But some of these little things that may have seemed okay before, but now women are finally letting us know that we're really not cool with that. So it is going to take some time to learn. All right, now I'm done talking about it because nobody else did any more comments, I don't think. Okay, so sorry to fake you out on that, but I didn't see those 2 comments before I signed off before, but now I'm officially signing off of the Eli Show. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. If you want a koozie, let me know. EliShow.com, iTunes, EliShow12@gmail.com. Give me feedback on this. Have a great day, folks.